We're talking about Pac-Man!
I know. What is there to say about Pac-Man? Almost everyone knows the original, so much to the point where you can't leave the house without seeing something related to Pac-Man. But for most of you, you're probably scratching your heads thinking, there can't possibly be anything else about this game where you collect dots. Like, there's no way that there could be a fan base for this game like Mario or Sonic has. Well, you're wrong. Dead wrong. There is so much under the covers of the original arcade game that you probably don't know about. How do I know this? Because I'm a Pac-Man fan. I freaking love this series.
And when I say I like Pac-Man, I really like Pac-Man.
The Pac-Man series is one of the first video game series I've ever played. Because of that, I grew a fondness of this character that I don't really see many people talk about. Like, they think it's only the arcade games and that's it. I even dressed up as the character for Halloween one year. Here, look at the footage. So let's go back in time and check out the other eras of Pac-Man that most of you probably don't know about. So let's start with something familiar with... When it came to arcades in the 80s, they were mainly dominated by men. When it came to the actual games, they were mainly space shooters like Space Invaders and Galaxian. Meet Toru Iwatani, a man that wanted to create an arcade game for everyone, not just men. So one pizzeria visit and 2 slices later, he had his character. The character was originally named Puckman in Japan, but, well, I'll just let Scott Pilgrim explain it.
They changed it because they thought that Puckman would be too easy to vandalize, like people could just scratch off the P and turn it into an F or whatever.
So they renamed it to Pac-Man. Although the game's main developers were Namco, they were published in America by Midway, who also gave Pac-Man the weirdest design ever. I don't know what this is. The game was a hit. So much so, after 1 year, almost $1 billion in quarters were used in Pac-Man machines. With the blatant cash cow that Pac-Man has become, they kept pumping out content. Games like Miss Pac-Man, Super Pac-Man, Pac-and-Pal, Pac-Man Plus, Pac-Man Arrangement, Pac-Mania, Junior Pac-Man, even some weird ones like Pac-Land, which was a platformer game. There was Baby Pac-Man, which was Pac-Man and Pinball. And the crown jewel of them all, Professor Pac-Man. Yeah! And it didn't stop at video games. Pac-Man was on cereal. Pac-Man was on pasta. Pac-Man was on TV.
This is a wrench!
He was at Six Flags. He was on vitamins. He had a ton of merchandise. For better or for worse, if you lived in the 80s, you knew about Pac-Man. But what people really wanted was to bring Pac-Man home with them. So, on the Atari 2600, they made... Maybe video games were a mistake. People were really unhappy with this port, so much so that it actually led to the video game crash alongside with E.T. for Atari. Even after the video game crash, the Pac-Man series struggled to get back to the way it was before. The Pac-Man series tried to make the jump to home consoles with ports and even new projects like Pac-Man 2, Pac-in-Time, Pac-Attack, the list goes on. All of these games were very experimental though, like they didn't follow anything that the original Pac-Man set up for them. Take Pac-Man 2 for example, you assume that it's going to be a sequel to the original arcade game, but it's a game where you guide Pac-Man as a disembodied voice using a slingshot to do chores. And possibly suffocate a farmer. I don't know what was up with that game. So when the PlayStation rolled around and 3D games were becoming the norm, Namco had to act fast or else this series would become irrelevant. So in 1999, they made Pac-Man World, and they started a renaissance. The Pac-Man World series was a trilogy of games that lasted from 1999 to 2005. Unlike the games before them, which were mainly arcade-based games, the Pac-Man World series was a set of 3D platformers like Mario 64 or Banjo-Kazooie. Not only that, but each and every game added more to the world of the Pac-Man series than ever before. Characters like Miss Pac-Man, Professor Pac-Man, Baby Pac-Man, and Junior Pac-Man became mainstay characters. Each game even had their own different plot. The first game, you're saving Pac-Man's birthday. The second game, you're saving the entire Pac Village. And the third game, you're saving the entire world. From aliens! Yeah, aliens. This is Erwin. He's very weird. In Pac-Man World 3, they even gave Pac-Man a voice.
Did someone say cake?
To be honest, I actually don't like it. I hope they never do it again. Pac-Man World was a success, spawning a kart racer and many collaborations, with one of the most famous being the inclusion of Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, and Blinky the Ghost in Mario Kart Arcade GP and Mario Kart Arcade GP 2. With the Pac-Man World Series, Pac-Man was once again relevant, and they finally built up their main cast. Pac-Man, Professor Pac-Man, Pac-Man Jr., Baby Pac-Man, and who can forget Miss Pac-Man? Where'd she go? What? Yeah, so fun fact, Miss Pac-Man wasn't created by Namco at all. It was actually created by a bunch of college students that made a ROM hack of the original Pac-Man and sold it to them. However, during a re-release of the game, they never paid the college students. So because of that, there's a lot of legal issues, and would unfortunately force Namco to retire the character. So what happens when you lose your second most popular character? You start all over, baby! At the beginning of the 2010s, the Pac-Man series went back to experimenting with other genres like it did in the early 90s. Some of the weirdest examples during this time were Pac-Man Party, a Mario Party-like game featuring familiar Pac-Man characters alongside some new faces, and being a guest character in the PS3 and PS Vita versions of Street Fighter Cross Tekken. Pac-Man Championship Edition also released on digital stores during this time, bringing the series back to its roots. However, even with the success of Championship Edition, the series was once again put into a position where Bandai Namco needed to innovate or risk the series being irrelevant again. So in 2013, the world was introduced to the new era of Pac-Man. Ew! Pac-Man and the Ghostly Adventures was Bandai Namco's attempt to reboot the series for kids at the time. This included a TV show, 2 games, and a bunch of merchandise. This is what people refer to as the Dark Age for a few reasons. For starters, Pac-Man was scaled down in age, becoming a teenager to relate with the audience that they were trying to target. Because of this, he feels less like a Pac-Man and more of a Pac-Boy. Which sounds like a silly nitpick, but the character has always been portrayed as this nice middle-aged man character since the 80s. Secondly, due to the previously mentioned lawsuit, Bandai Namco had to start over with the main cast of the series, creating characters that just didn't connect well with audiences. Miss Pac-Man? Who's that? How about Cylindria? Professor Pac-Man? Nah, Circumference is where it's at. These 2 reasons led to alienating the already existing fanbase, removing some of the traits that made the series thrive since Pac-Man World. And once again, they did the unfortunate sin of giving Pac-Man a voice.
Oh man, I'm a meme! This would be funny if it wasn't so horrible.
For fans of the series, this was the nail in the coffin. Pac-Man was the most irrelevant he has ever been in the public eye. Bandai Namco's biggest fear became true. However, a glimmer of hope would soon be found during the production of Super Smash Bros. For 3DS and Wii U. The game was being produced by Nintendo, Sora Limited, and Bandai Namco. As the story goes, the director of the game, Masahiro Sakurai, wanted to put Pac-Man in as a playable guest fighter. However, Bandai Namco wanted him to use the new Ghostly Adventures design. Sakurai was against the idea so much that he said if they forced him to use the new design, he just wouldn't include him. Sakurai would eventually end up winning the argument, and the Pac-Man design used for the World games would be the one used for his inclusion. The impact of this singular design choice leads us to the result that we have today. The year is now 2025, 45 years after the original game was made, and we are in a much better place than we were at the beginning of the 2010s. After Pac-Man's inclusion in the Super Smash Bros. Series, Bandai Namco retired the Ghostly Adventures timeline and reverted Pac-Man's design back to where he was in the 2000s. As for recent projects, Pac-Man would return to the Super Smash Bros. Series in 2018's Super Smash Bros. Ultimate with minor differences. On top of that, Pac-Man has also appeared as cosmetics in Super Monkey Ball and Fortnite. Pac-Man Museum Plus released on all major platforms, which allowed people to play the classics in one big package. And Bandai Namco finally went back to the World Series with Pac-Man World Re-Pac, remaking the first game for modern audiences. They even created a character called Pac-Mom, a substitute for Miss Pac-Man, who still doesn't look that appealing, but it's better than nothing. And it still doesn't stop at video games. Pac-Man would also be an episode of the Amazon Prime Video series called Secret Level, an anthology series based on popular games. The episode took a darker direction with the concepts of the Pac-Man games rather than the character himself, with a big focus on repetition. This episode leads us to the most recent entry in the series, Shadow Labyrinth, a Metroidvania game in the world of that one secret level episode releasing this July. And now this video has caught you up to speed with the Pac-Man franchise, its history, and its many different games. While Pac-Man will never be as big as it once was in the arcades, the series still has a passionate fanbase that loves a lot of what the series has to put out. Yes, even Ghostly Adventures has its fans. As for me, I had troubles talking to people older than me growing up, so the series was able to let me connect with people that were a lot older than me, whether that be from work or with family. When people older than me would explain their experiences with the series, I would always look it up later that night on my iPhone to learn more about the history, which grew my love for video game history as a whole. Everyone has something they obsess over all their life, and mine just happened to be a yellow ball in a maze. This was the abridged history of Pac-Man.